So like a lot of people, I fell in love with The Last of Us when it came out, over a decade ago now. The darkness and grittiness, the Joel and Ellie story, the Resident Evil style gameplay. So I was obviously excited when Part 2 came out in 2020, especially after loving Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy so much. I mean, at this point in time, so 2019, 2020, I felt like such a huge Naughty Dog fan. I considered them one of my favorite studios and genuinely believed they were advancing the video game medium in a number of ways. And I think because of the long wait, and I guess what I'd call my positive bias coming into the sequel, once I dove into the game, I was along for the ride. I did my best to get on board with all the violence and character deaths and these big ideas Neil Druckmann was pushing about revenge and empathy and on and on. I did my best as a player to accept and not resist the experience I was having, and I do still feel in many ways Part 2 is an impressive video game in terms of its sound design, visuals and art direction, character models and facial animations, the speed and seamlessness of the combat gameplay. There's even a couple of moments throughout the story where I do feel the concept of grief is really thoughtfully addressed. But as the years have gone on, and as Sony has just beaten this franchise to death and force-fed it to us over and over and over, my tune has changed. All this overexposure got me to shed that bias from 5 years ago and re-examine the story, particularly the story of Part 2, because that is what Naughty Dog is hanging their hat on with this IP, its story. And I realized with a clearer mind and a lot more distance from 2020 and all the chatter about this game before and after it released, that given its potential out the gate, given its possibilities, I am disappointed with the end result. And on top of that, I'm just beyond fatigued with the whole thing. I don't care about the HBO adaptation. I don't care about repurchasing the game, getting these so-called remasters. I don't even care at this point if there's a Part 3 or not. And that's somewhat because I do believe the direction of Naughty Dog dramatically changed when some years back Bruce Straley departed the studio, leaving Druckmann as the sole person in charge. And I'm just no longer interested in his vision as a writer or as a game director. I'm no longer buying what he's selling, and that's why with this podcast, I'm kind of disengaging. And to better articulate my disappointment and my reasons for disengaging, I'm bringing in my friend Leon, aka the Mr. Leonaste, who has found himself in a very similar place with this franchise and has very similar feelings about it. And Leon actually compiled a bunch of his observations about Part 2's story in this big post he shared on The Last of Us and Last of Us 2 subreddits a couple months ago. A brave move, no doubt, wading into those waters. But we're going to use that post, that list he put together, as a bit of a basis for our discussion here. And if you want to see that list yourself, I have that link down in the description of this video. But before I kick it over to Leon, I do want to say, knowing it might hit deaf ears, that despite how polarizing and politicized and tribal and black and white the response to this game has become, this here is meant to be a measured discussion, and it's certainly subjective. Just because I feel the way I do or Leon feels the way he feels doesn't mean you're not entitled to your own opinion. And I don't fault anyone for liking Part 2 or disagreeing with any of our points here. That's fine. Again, this is just an open discussion between two friends. And this is also that point where the spoilers are going to start flowing like crazy. Basically every possible spoiler for The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2 or Season 2. So if you don't want to hear those, now's the time to hit pause and come back later. But Leon, it's good to be with you, man. Thanks for hopping on with me. Why don't you just talk a little bit about your background with these games and how your perspective has changed over time before we get into this great list you put together.
Okay, my history with The Last of Us. Actually, I know about the game from my younger brother, Anthony. I think he's the biggest The Last of Us fan I know. He and his friend used to play this game really often when it came out on our PlayStation 3 in my old family home. They would come together and just play the game, go through it over and over. He got to a point where he was able to play this game on the hardest difficulty. He and his friend beat it like that. He was a super fan of the story and just loved the game through and through. The story, the gameplay, the graphics, everything. So since he loved this game so much, he wanted me to try it out. And also since I knew that he loved it so much, I really wanted to get into that. But I didn't really play games back then. I think I was like 15 or 16 years old. I tried to play it. I got to this tutorial section where it's the first time you use a gun and you have to kill a zombie. I died 4 times. I wasn't able to get past that, and I decided that if I'm struggling on the tutorial, I don't think this game is for me. A few years passed, I went to work and got a bit into gaming. Got a PlayStation 5 about 2021, maybe 2022, and since I didn't play anything on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3, I had really many games to go through, so I decided to try The Last of Us again. I played the remaster version from PlayStation 4, and it was an amazing journey from beginning to end. I couldn't believe how well a game can show a story, how great the performances are of the actors, and how realistic everything is. I felt like Joel and Ellie are real people. I really remember at the end of the whole game, just it was a feeling like when you read a great book and the book goes and the story ends of the book, you just feel like you just made really good friends with the characters and now you need to say goodbye. But you know they are going to have a great and awesome life after you say goodbye. It won't be with you, but at least they are happy, they're together, and they have the rest of their lives in front of them. So after finishing part 1, loving it from beginning to end, I thought to myself, oh my, I really want to play the second part. I didn't know anything about the game, and I'm super happy I didn't stumble upon any spoilers, either to part 1 and to part 2. And then my friend from work, he lent me part 2. So between me playing part 1 and playing part 2, it was like a day. So that was very interesting. I could go straight to playing part 2 and I felt super happy. Like, for example, when I watched Breaking Bad, I started watching it when all of the seasons came out. So I did lose something that people that watched it from the beginning had, but also the people that watched it from the start don't have the same experience I have when there's no pauses between the seasons. I don't know which one is better, but it was cool to know that I can just go straight into playing the game part 2. The only thing I checked before I went into part 2 was I watched one YouTube trailer. This is quite important because in this trailer, Joel specifically tells Ellie, "Do you think I'll let you go alone?" or something like that. He finds her, she's startled by him, and he just says, "Oh, look, here, let's go on an adventure. I wouldn't let you do this by yourself." And there are also a few other scenes with Joel, like being older and them looking like they're on a quest. So that was only this one trailer. My experience with part 2 is interesting because it was back to back. First thing I really noticed at the start was how amazing the graphics are. From PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, it's a giant leap. But also I noticed that the dialogue is a bit different. It feels a bit more, I don't know how to say it, like modern movie dialogue. Each sentence is a quip. It's not natural talking with people, it's just he says something quippy, then he says something quippy, and then again. That's the first thing I noticed, but I thought, okay, they are teenagers, maybe the story is just about teenagers are quippy, so let's go with that. And then the scene starts with Joel getting brutally killed by Abby, and for me that was a very interesting choice. I didn't think it was a bad choice, I just thought, oh my, if they killed Joel so fast, it was like the first hour or the second hour of the game, oh my, something amazing has to be later in this game, because right now the bar went from the bar was super high. I was super excited, I was very sad that Joel died, but man, if they killed Joel right now, oh, something is amazing gonna have to happen for the rest of the game. But also, I had this weird feeling, man, I did see Joel with Ellie on an adventure. That's weird. And because I saw that trailer and because I was 100% sure that Joel and Ellie are on an adventure together when he is clearly older and he says he won't let her do it on her own, I didn't really believe that Joel died in that place. I know it sounds weird, but...
Maybe it was a dream or something?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe he faked it somehow. because we never really saw him dead or something like that. We saw his grave. So I was pretty sure we're gonna have a super plot twist that Joel is actually alive. Is gonna be awesome, and yeah, I was super excited to be continuing to play the game. Each hour that passed, my excitement got lower and lower and lower until I realized, they raised the bar up so high killing Joel, and nothing really interesting is happening in the game. No real set pieces are made. In The Last of Us Part 1, it's a twice shorter game. In the first few hours, there was, the upside down shooting thing.
Leon, I think it feels a little more like Uncharted in that sense. Don't you think, Part 1, with the set pieces?
Yes, that makes sense. But I also think they are more down to earth, because in Uncharted, you're jumping from moving buildings and in The Last of Us, the set piece is your character is upside down and has to kill zombies. It's more down to earth and realistic. And the scene where they push the car to get it started, it's a thing. A lot of people have this experience of pushing a car to get it started. So there was no real set pieces like this. It was just walking and talking, killing zombies, cutscene, walking and talking, killing zombies. I really did like the gameplay, but the excitement was just falling and falling until we get to the climax. Abby finds Ellie. She just shot Jesse. She's about to shoot Ellie. Ellie throws her hands up, says, "I think I know why you killed him," something like that. At that point, I'm like, okay, let's get to this. It's gonna be amazing. Something awesome is gonna happen. And we cut to black, and we get to play Abby, which is a bit boring because again, you just walk, talk, and the guy saves a zebra. Then you walk and talk. Oh, the doctor is her dad. Okay, I mean, okay, that's why she killed him. Okay, and for the rest of the game, it was basically like, let's get to the interesting part. Let's get to the interesting part. Playing Abby felt like a side quest that I didn't want to do. I oftentimes wanted to skip because from the beginning of playing Ellie, you have one objective. When you play, for example, Zelda Breath of the Wild, you have one objective, kill Ganon. And everything you do points you slowly toward this objective, kill Ganon, kill Ganon. Okay, when you play Abby, there is no real objective. Why are you playing her? Why are you going from place A to place B? Why are you talking to these people? They are already dead. I don't need to talk to them. Oh, Danny died. Well, I don't know who Danny is. They never told who Danny is. Like, why should I be invested in this? What am I even doing?
Well, and Leon, I think you begin to realize what Naughty Dog is doing, right? You're like, oh, they're having me play as the quote-unquote villain so that I can begin to empathize and relate to that villain. But I think to your point, all the points you're making, it's like, is that worth it in a video game? Is that fun? Is that meaningful? I guess sort of an interesting idea on paper, but when you're actually doing it, is it what you want out of the game?
I think my biggest gripe is I didn't see an objective in playing with her. Okay, later after I played a few hours, it was like, oh, okay, the objective is make Abby likable, make her redeem herself or something like that, but there's no story objective in playing with her. It's a hit or miss, and in my case, it was a giant miss, and I was hoping that Abby could redeem herself, and in my case, I think her character is irredeemable. She did nothing throughout the whole story of playing with her that is redeemable. Then we get back to the most interesting moment when we find out, okay, Abby finds Ellie. Now we have to play as Abby. And I'm like, okay, so the whole point of the game, half of the game was to find Abby and kill her. Now when I'm here, this is a fail state. Now doing the thing I wanted to do for 12 hours makes me restart the level. Okay, that's not even cool. That's not even interesting. I get the point that it's a subversion of expectations. For me, it was, so what? Okay.
Well, and Leon, wouldn't it have been so different if, like some games do, they had multiple endings? And it actually incentivized you as a player. It motivated you to go back and make different decisions to see what the outcomes were. And maybe one of the outcomes is the outcome we got, where Ellie doesn't kill Abby and forgives her or whatever. It decides revenge isn't worth it. If that was one of several options, I think people like us would have been less turned off by it, you know? It was that they forced that to be the only outcome, the only ending, to the point where I'm sure, as you've seen, people have uploaded the compilation videos of all of Abby's potential deaths in the game.
Okay, I never saw a compilation like that, but I was thinking of making one myself because the plot armor is really thick on Abby. The ending was weird, since the length of a game is very interesting, because if you read a book, you know how much you have left. When you're watching a movie, you know that, okay, it's going to be about 2-3 hours, so it's quite easy to estimate how much you have left. In The Last of Us Part 2, I had no idea how long of the game I have to go on. So when there's this part where they're at home with Dina and the baby, I was thinking, okay, this is the ending. Sure, I understand. Okay, let the game finish. And then Tommy shows up. Ellie goes on another adventure. I was scared that this is chapter 3 of the game, the beginning of chapter 3. And I was thinking, oh man, I mean, so much has happened and another big part of this game is going on. When I got to the end, it was just disappointing. The bar was very high since Joel's death. Nothing really got close to it. The ending was just there. I felt cheated with that trailer. I was promised a thing that never happened, and it slowly dawned on me that I expected a lot of things from this game, but not this. Was this experience worth it? And after the credits rolled, I was sitting there thinking about the story, thinking how actually part 2 made me feel a bit more negative about the whole world. Straight after finishing the game, I would give it, I don't know, a 6 out of 10. But then one day passed, another day passed, another day passed. I kept thinking about this whole grand adventure, the 23 hours I put into that game, and the more I thought about the story and if it was all worth it, I came to the realization that it really wasn't. This wasn't a story worth telling. This wasn't a story worth 23 hours of storytelling, and I decided to think of it as fan fiction. It doesn't really exist as canon for me. Only The Last of Us exists. I also refuse to call it The Last of Us Part 1, since it's just The Last of Us. There never was a Part 2. So yeah, basically this. Just disappointment and sadness that it could have been so many great things. It could have been so many awful things. But it was just,
I think the is a good way to put it, because the more I've thought about it, the more I've landed on it's just strange. Like, I don't even know that I would call it straight up bad or something. Like, it feels like that's too simple for what it is. Like, it's odd. Like, there were odd decisions made, and I think, like, the points you were making, Neil Druckmann clearly had this experiment in mind where he wanted you to empathize with the apparent villain in the story. And again, on paper, it's like, okay, that's an idea. Maybe that's interesting. But it all feels kind of retconned to me. Deciding that Abby was the doctor's daughter, the doctor who dies at the end of the first game, and building this entire story around her revenge. She gets her revenge. I don't, to your point, I don't know that that's worthwhile, at least to me. Like, that's not, I was so swept up in it the first time I played it, I felt differently. But as the years have passed and as I've had more time to think about it, yeah, I just don't think that experiment is very interesting. And it goes back to, again, you have no choices in the game. There's no meaningful choices you can make. That's kind of the irony of it, is that video games are an interactive medium. And Neil Druckmann wants to play with that by having you empathize with the villain. But at the same time, he gives you no free will to make any decisions in this interactive medium. So the more I think about it, the more I think it's strange. And, you know, there's a famous quote that the hero and the villain are just a matter of perspective. in fiction. That's so true. I mean, that's true in real life, right? That's true in like history. And it's like, well, duh. If you were Abby, you would want revenge. Sure, like that's a given. You know what I mean? So to actually, to your point, Leon, to force the player to play for Abby for what, maybe 12 hours or 10, 12 hours or something. It's like, did we need to do that? You know, like, I think the point's understood.
And also, the point is just, it's not even that deep, in my opinion. Speaking to what you've just told me, that you wouldn't even call the game bad, there's this quote that artists want to make the person that experiences the art have an emotion. So if you love art or hate the artist wins because you felt a strong emotion. I think saying that someone hates The Last of Us Part 2 or that The Last of Us Part 2 is bad is also giving points to Neil Druckmann, but I think people hate The Last of Us 2 only because The Last of Us 1 exists. So, in my opinion, it gives even more credit to The Last of Us Part 1 and takes away from The Last of Us Part 2. Because The Last of Us Part 2 on its own, as a story, is just, okay. And that's it for me.
Right. The studio, Naughty Dog, was in a very different place when they made the first game. And there were different people involved. And I think, you know, to that point about like being good or bad, that's what I like about the list you put together too, is that obviously like you are being critical of the game, but at the same time, you're just observing how the entire story is sort of glued together with all of these coincidences.
Yeah. Also, I can mention that I've played the game 2 times. The second time I've played it was 2 months ago. It's been 2 or 3 years since I played the game the first time. I wanted to replay the game to see if maybe I missed something, and I decided to take notes while playing. And I quickly realized the story is just based on coincidences, and really important story beats are just random occurrences. And I believe that in a story, a random occurrence can happen, but if it happens over and over and all of the important things are just happen, I don't know, especially for Naughty Dog, a studio that holds in high regard that their products are super realistic, super gritty and just real. Having a story with so many plot holes and so many coincidences like this is just, you can feel that it's written by someone else. A point you also said that Bruce Straley was involved in writing the game, because I remember when reading about part 1 that Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann had a bunch of different ideas, and they would, I'm envisioning them pulling, a tug of war. Neil Druckmann is on one side, Bruce Straley is on the other side, and they just throw ideas and play this imaginary tug of war to find the idea that is somewhere in the middle, so that the idea is accepted by both of them and is also strong enough to withstand the tugging from the other side. And this imaginary tug of war that I have in my mind, this is the effect we have with The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us, the original. And when I watched a documentary showcasing The Last of Us Part 2, I also noticed that Neil Druckmann almost had already planned the whole story and just told everyone what to do, and didn't have really anyone to tell him, oh, that's an awful idea, please don't do this. He just had a story envisioned, he said, let's do this, and they did this. Same thing also, Craig Mazin, he and Neil Druckmann are making The Last of Us HBO series. When he made Chernobyl, it was the same thing. He had an idea, but also different people made each episode. The different people contributed to the story, and it was also a tug of war. They were trying to find ideas. No, this is awful, this is bad. Oh, let's try this. No, maybe this. It was a constant back and forth to find a great idea. When you watch interviews with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann on The Last of Us HBO series, they both feel like they can't stop gashing over each other. Oh, your idea is so awesome. No, your idea is so awesome too. Oh, let's do this. It's just, there's no struggle to find the best story possible there. And that's why I also think the TV series flopped a bit, because they went into the story believing that this is the best they are gonna do. and there was no opposition to their ideas.
And I know we've talked about this before, Leon. I'm a really big believer in that J.R.R. Tolkien approach, where it's more effective to create like tension and a sense of fear versus actually going over the edge and doing extreme things and the shock value that comes with that. Like in Lord of the Rings, the original Fellowship has 9 members, and only one of them, Boromir, dies. And his death is actually very significant because it completes this redemptive character arc for him. And it makes you fearful for the other characters throughout the story. Like later in the story, when Sam and Frodo are in danger, you have to believe that something bad could happen to them. Maybe one of them or both of them could die because you know the stakes are high. It's happened before. And I think that's really effective. Like that's an effective way to use your characters and to tell a story. Whereas if you just kill off all your characters, or you kill off the best or maybe the strongest or the most beloved characters, and there's not a great reason behind it, I think the story is just going to suffer. I mean, it's to your point, when you played the game for the first time, you're like, okay, if they're killing Joel this early, it must be for a great reason, because Joel helps drive the story. Joel helps Ellie's character develop. Joel is just an interesting character in and of himself. So to get rid of that character, there must be a good reason for doing that, right? Yeah, in my opinion, in your opinion, there isn't a good reason. And I just don't really want to spend 23 hours or whatever trying to empathize with his killer. That's just not interesting to me. I would rather him have just not died. Or if he died, it would have been for some more interesting reason. I mean, think about part 1, where he almost dies in Colorado on the college campus. Like when he gets impaled by that shard of glass and then he's in that basement. It's meaningful because it forces Ellie's character to develop. Ellie has to mature. She has to become more independent. And as the player, you're genuinely nervous. I remember the first time I played, I was like, Joel's gonna die. This is it. Like, this is how Joel dies. But he doesn't. The developers took you right to that edge, but they didn't push you off the edge. And Joel survives. Yet Ellie develops in the meantime. Like, I thought that was so well done. And that's just an example of how I think part 1 is just handled better. It's a better story. The character development's better. Whereas in part 2, there's so much shock value. There's so much violence. And I'm okay with violence, but there should be a point to the violence. Like when it's just this over the top and it's Joel having his head beaten in and a pregnant woman being killed and other people being killed in cold blood, like it gets silly, you know, and you sort of, I think as the player, you become desensitized to it. Like it's just too much.
Yeah, the deaths also don't really have an impact. When I noticed that Joel's death didn't really have an impact on Abby, as you said, Jesse dies, Tommy gets shot in the head, it's like death. It's like, okay, calm down. It's not even impactful to me anymore. So what's the point?
Because think about part 1, Leon. Part 1, a lot of the violence is human versus zombie. I'm not saying there's no human on human violence, there is. But it's a lot of the violence comes with the zombies. Whereas in part 2, there's much more human on human violence. And as a result, a lot of the characters die. And again, like I think someone like Jesse is a pretty interesting character. Like I think there's potential with Jesse, and you know, for him to just die in the way he dies and then it's barely addressed again. It's like, wouldn't the story have been better if Jesse were still around? Think about the way that it changes Ellie too. I mean, some of the decisions Ellie makes in part 2, I didn't like. They felt like things Ellie, like the real Ellie, wouldn't have done. And I think it's more, and you know, people will point to the torture scene in part 1 with Joel, and they're like, oh, look how ruthless he was. And it's like, right, but that's different than Ellie killing a pregnant woman, you know? Like they're not the same thing. What is the point of showing us all of that? Don't you think it was more effective in part 1, how it's sort of hinted at that Joel has a rough past, and Joel has maybe made some morally questionable decisions in the past, but you don't see all that play out. You don't participate in it. I think in a way, like leaving it to your imagination is almost more powerful. You know, and it's not saying everything Joel did was right, but part 1 just doesn't get into all of that as much. Whereas in part 2, some of Ellie's killings are so explicit, like you said. I don't know. I just didn't like where they took her character either.
Well, she also did it in self-defense. When you watch it again, she doesn't know that she's pregnant, and it is in self-defense. But yeah, for example, that scene where she kills the girl playing the PS Vita, that's just super brutal. When she kills, I don't know what his name was, Jordan, and she cusses at him while she sticks the knife in his throat, it's just overly brutal. And I get what you mean. Yeah, also, Amnesia is such a great horror game, and so much of the horror is because you don't really see the monsters. You hear them, you see their silhouettes, but you don't really know how they look. You don't really know what they can do to you. The moment you would be able to see them, see their animations, see their attacks, and everything, it would just lose its horror. And I think you perfectly encapsulated it, that we see so much brutality from Ellie that why is she even doing that? It doesn't feel like Ellie. She did things before to survive. Now, okay, she wants revenge. She's head over heels for revenge, but it just seems off. I remember the scene with Nora. There was this prompt for you to hit her with a pipe. I remember seeing that prompt. She is already coughing because of the spores in the air, and this X button appears for you to hit her. And I remember sitting there and thinking, the prompt appeared, and every time a prompt appears in game, if you do the prompt, okay, you push the story. If you don't do it, there's some sort of alternative, and usually the alternative is you die. So I just wanted to see, because I'm interested in the animation they would do. So I just sat there and was interested in what would happen if I don't do anything. And I kept sitting, and nothing happened. So I then felt like this choice was forced upon me. I was forced to make a decision that I didn't really want to do. I also remember this similar thing when I played The Last of Us, the original game. When you go to the doctor, the game tells you, you understand from the game that you have to kill him to get Ellie. And I thought to myself, okay, he is a doctor, right? He doesn't deserve death, but if I don't go through him, I can't get to Ellie. So I decided to shoot him in the leg. He got shot in the leg, he fell down, okay, and I got to Ellie. And that was a decision I made. I could decide to shoot him in the head, I could decide to shoot him in the leg. I decided to shoot him in the leg, and I felt that decision did matter for me. Because, as you've previously said, we are playing a game. It's an interactive medium. In The Last of Us Part 2, I didn't really feel I can interact with the world. I felt like I was being forced to play out theater that someone else imagined, and then I was ridiculed for doing these things that the game forced me to do, which is crazy. It's really weird.
Leon, it is. That's such a good way to put it. In Part 2, it's a very impressive game world. Yet, you don't feel like you have any autonomy. You don't have any ability to make meaningful decisions in that world. It feels like you're on rails. Like you said, you're just kind of passing through this theater that somebody else created. And I honestly think so much of the backlash that Part 2 received would have never happened if you just had meaningful choices in the game. I mean, think about it. Like some games, right, based on the design, the genre, some video games offer the player a lot of choices, some less so. But who would raise their hand as a gamer and say, I don't like meaningful choices in the games I play, right? No one would say that. We always kind of perk up when we have the opportunity to make different decisions in a game and then see what the outcome is. Like that's kind of a staple of From Software's games, is that there's different endings. And depending on NPCs you align with or certain things you do in the game, you might get a different ending, which sort of affects like the fate of that universe, which is pretty interesting. And obviously people will replay those games over and over to see all the different endings. And those are not, in a traditional sense, like story-heavy games. So in a story-heavy game, to give the player really not one meaningful choice, It's strange. It's really strange. I mean, maybe this would be a good kind of transition to go into some of these coincidences you've listed out, because there's so many silly instances where one character could easily kill another, or there's like clear plot armor, like you said. Because there's no choices, because there's no variability, it starts to feel strange. Like, again, it's ironic because the world is so realistic, yet for me it almost breaks immersion a little bit. Like you were saying, that scene with Nora where you don't really have a choice, you're just forced into doing something. Those moments take me out of the story and out of the realistic environments, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing a game.
Speaking about choices in games, I also believe that even with one ending, you could have game choices that matter to you.
I have your list in front of me. I want to just rattle some of these off, and you can just hop in at any point if you have more that you want to add or say. Number 1 is such a good one. They believe they have Tommy's location. They don't know for sure that Joel is also there. He stumbles on Abby and saves her, just in the nick of time. Later on, Tommy casually name drops both him and Joel, says where they live to this armed, unknown group of people. He does it twice. Joel does it. Again, the Washington Liberation Front, they're looking for Tommy. He introduces himself and says, "This is my brother." Nobody bats an eye, and it's only when Joel says his name, everybody reacts.
Yeah, this is just lazy writing, in my opinion. It's like they wanted to make them find Joel. I don't know, they forgot that the group is there looking for Tommy. It's just weird. What are the odds that they stumble on each other in like a middle of a forest? I mean, I walk to work and my friend also walks to work. We use the same path to walk to work because we live close to each other. We rarely walk to work together, even though we use the same path. It's really rare that we stumble upon each other walking to the same destination using the same roads. So what are the odds of a random person finding another random person in such a big place?
Well, I would say the story entirely hinges on Abby's revenge, right? That's what kicks off part 2. If that's so important, why does it happen randomly? Even if we didn't agree with some of the storytelling decisions, if they actually got into the settlement and maybe captured them, like took them hostage, and it was a little more organized and deliberate, that would feel more believable to me than this just happy coincidence that plays out at the beginning of the game. Well, and that happens again, right? It's like Jesse accidentally finding Ellie in Seattle. It's like, if it happens once, maybe you can kind of be like, okay, it's fiction, sure, whatever. But it's that this happens over and over. And then another good one with the timeline here, why doesn't Ellie just shoot Abby or shoot anyone when she enters the room? She's rushing toward the door. She is pretty aware Joel's being tortured, knows he's in there, hears him grunting in pain, has her gun ready. But instead of shooting, she, I guess, freezes, suddenly has her guard down, and then they're able to take advantage of her. So again, there's a lot of like moments where Ellie is kind of ruthless and calculating, and then convenient moments like this where they make her kind of clueless.
Yeah. Also, if you watch the cutscene, you notice that she opens the door and she's still inside the corridor. So she sees Abby and Joel and other people, but they don't see her. Instead of, I don't know, standing there and thinking what to do, she just randomly takes a few steps forward. And I just don't believe that Ellie would do this because, for one, we are the player and we already know how to play the game. So if we hear zombies in the room, we don't randomly go inside and wait to see what happens. We open the door, I don't know, throw a bomb inside, start shooting immediately if we see something bad going on. Also, in part 1, when Joel is being choked by a guy underwater, she just comes right up, takes a gun and shoots him in the head, not thinking about it at all. Why does she stumble so much now?
Because we're controlling Ellie at that moment, and then we lose control when the cutscene kicks in. So you're watching that as a player going, well, even I wouldn't have done that. Regardless of what Ellie would or would not have done, I wouldn't have done that.
I would also want to point out one thing. I haven't written it. Tommy stands looking at Joel, and Joel is looking at Tommy. So both of them have a 360 view. One has a 180 view and the other one has a 180 view. Abby walks behind Joel with a shotgun. The camera doesn't see it. But she is straight in view of Tommy. Why doesn't Tommy react? Why, for all of a sudden, the game has a logic that if the camera doesn't see it, nobody sees it? That's also just... It takes me out of the realism of the story.
Yeah, it feels like it was meant, like Druckmann was too obsessed with making it this moment where the rug gets pulled out from under you. Like it's this big shocking surprise, and then, you know, he's not just shot, but he's beaten violently, and it's such a, like, we've already seen Joel suffer a lot throughout, you know, part one at times, so it's hard to understand why it happens the way it does for any reason other than shock value. Like, it's just meant to be shocking, and again, what's the point? Another one, the Washington Liberation Front, they're all wearing their patches when they're in Jackson so Tommy can identify them. Tommy leaving without Ellie makes no sense.
Barge in.
Yeah, he knows she will go after him. Jesse catching up with Ellie too. 3 separate missions to achieve one goal. If they had just planned it out a bit before leaving, it would have been a lot better. It's such a good point. Ellie stumbles upon photos and names of every single person that was there to witness Joel's torture execution. Again, just like, that's convenient for her.
Yeah. Also, I've heard an argument for this that when you're young, you take photos of you and your friends. It's normal for teen girls to do that. Okay, I get the argument, but why would you need to write the names of your friends on the photos? Why not write a date when the photo was taken or something else? Why write their names on their photos? That's just so weird to do. I don't know anybody that does that.
What about Ellie accidentally dropping her map? That feels like a huge one. Like, it's hard to, like, as you wrote, it's hard to believe that Ellie would draw a giant circle around the theater where Dina is staying pregnant. And that's the only way Abby was able to find out where she was located. And then all the lines going from the theater to the other Liberation Front members are almost straight lines. Yeah, that's such a strange one. It
speaks for itself. I mean, also her dropping the map. There's Tommy, Jesse, and Ellie there. I understand that Ellie is having a panic attack because she just noticed she killed a pregnant woman. But Jesse and Tommy being there, no one... It just feels super weird. So on the nose. Again, it feels like Neil Druckmann had an idea. Okay, Abby confronts Ellie, and Abby has the upper hand. I have no idea how to do it. Okay, let's make her find a map. Also, another thing, you find the map as a player in the game. You can play the game and not find the map. That is an option. But the map just appears in your inventory when you go along through the game. So if you never find the map, it still shows up. So even this little choice you have during the game, you're still forced to not have a choice, because if you won't find the map, Abby will never have the opportunity to find Ellie. So the game forces you to have a map.
That's so strange. That would have been another opportunity where maybe the map is really hard to find. And if you do find it, things play out the way they do in the theater. But if you don't find it, maybe things play out differently. It's just like you said, it's like there was just one idea of this has to happen this way. And it doesn't matter how many silly decisions we have to make to get there, we're going to get there.
Or you find the map and the game is way easier because you have the map. But you have no idea the consequences this will bring to you later. And when you realize, oh boy. And then you can pick to play the game another way, not find the map, make the game way harder for you, but something changes.
How about this one too? How did 15-year-old Ellie travel all the way to St. Mary's Hospital on her own? Because Joel and Ellie together were barely able to make that trek in the first game.
Yeah.
It's like, again, like you said, Leon, it's like Druckmann wanted a specific cutscene. He wanted a moment. He wanted it in that location, and the details don't really matter.
Also, when we talk about that scene when she's in the Barry's hospital, she tells Joel, tell me everything that happened. Why does he say it in the worst way possible to her? Why doesn't he say the whole truth? This would be such a different impact. Ellie could have reacted normally, but we get this weird... I don't even remember what he told her. He just told her, making the vaccine would kill you, so I stopped them. I don't believe Joel would be saying that, because he understands that the thing he will tell her now is do or die for the relationship. And I'm pretty sure he practiced a lot. He went through his head a lot of times. What would he tell Ellie if she ever needs to find out? And this is one of the worst ways he could tell her what happened in that hospital.
Here's another one. Very similar to the Joel torture scene early in the game. While Abby is kicking Tommy when he's lying on the ground, Ellie could have done something, could have shot her. She had her gun in her hand, and Abby was vulnerable for a few seconds there. Abby finds a lead on Tommy's whereabouts, and yeah, you asked, how could anyone even know where Tommy could possibly be? He left the Fireflies over 10 years ago. How would that point to Jackson? Abby travels for like 6 hours to get to Owen, barely surviving all the harsh environments, and Mel just fast travels there via teleportation. Abby is hanged.
She's pregnant.
Oh, I know, right? Abby is hanged and about to have her belly cut open when a random whistle out of nowhere stops the scar. Then after the altercation, Lev shows up to save her again seconds before her death. Abby and Lev slip and fall off the crane, but happen to fall into a building that has a pole. That one is pretty silly. That's gotta be one of the craziest ones, and not even in like a Nathan Drake Uncharted kind of set piece way. The more I've thought about that one, it's just crazy. I mean, Leon, think about Joel, the shard of glass that nearly kills him in the first game, and compare that fall to the fall that they take through that building, through that glass, even if there's a pole. Like,
yeah.
Right. And again, maybe one instance of this, it's okay, but there's just so many. Here's another one. Tommy had the upper hand on Abby hiding behind a door and chose not to shoot, just bashed her with the door and hit her with his rifle, and then suddenly Yara appears out of nowhere to save Abby. Yeah, there's a lot of that, like convenient timing of someone showing up. Half a second before Abby is killed by Isaac, Yara seemingly comes to life, comes to her senses, and is able to aim and shoot him without anyone hearing anything or noticing her move. The big storm Isaac was waiting for stops super quickly. We only see it for a bit while playing Ellie. So the sea was calm enough that Abby and Lev could easily leave using a rowboat. Lev found the map that Ellie accidentally lost. It's the only way Abby could have known where Ellie could be, right? Living their whole lives in an apocalypse, no one thought about not leaving the lights on in a whole theater and to secure every possible entry point. That's such a good one. Especially once Jesse and Tommy are there. You'd think even if Ellie was so caught up in things and she was worried about Dina and there's just a lot going on, you think even they would have known better.
And they seem to be just chilling. I wouldn't be surprised if they were watching a movie in the theater full blast.
Yeah, like moments before they're both shot, they're just like chilling. It's so weird. Yeah. Abby screams to Tommy, I said back up, yet somehow Ellie and Jesse don't hear that. I will actually say that occurred to me the very first time I played the game. I just kept thinking, how did they not hear this? The voices are echoing throughout the building. How do they not know?
And there's only one door separating them. So it's not like they're a few blocks away.
Right, and it's not like a bank door or something. It's like a flimsy door. And then, I guess just to add on top of that, Abby doesn't miss and just perfectly shoots Jesse in the head the second he steps through. It's there's so much of which that almost goes back to like the old Star Wars movies and like how the stormtroopers can never accurately shoot anybody. It feels that way in The Last of Us unless Druckmann decides someone needs to be shot, right? There's so many instances where nobody can land a bullet. And then in moments like this, it's like a John Wick movie or something. It's like, oh, Abby gets him perfectly, no problem.
And a few seconds later, Ellie tries to shoot Abby, but she doesn't shoot her when Abby is focused on Tommy. She shoots her when Abby's focus is back on Ellie, and she does it like pointing behind her and even not looking where she's shooting. It's also so weird. Why would she do that? I played as Ellie for 12 hours. I wouldn't do that.
That's the thing. Like, you become, especially with the combat gameplay in part 2, you become really good as the player at like reading, situations. And like you talked about earlier, these 2 points kind of go together. Ellie has the upper hand on Abby. Instead of shooting her in the face, she hits her with a wooden plank, and that's the second time this happens.
I mean, if this was me, I would plant a trip mine there and just, I don't know, take my camera out and record that. It's a prank, say, at the end. I mean, she had the upper hand, and she had a lot of time to think, how would she attack Abby that goes through the only opening that's there? And she chooses a wooden plank out of all the things, not even a pipe that she used to kill Nora.
Well, then Dina has the upper hand on Abby. Instead of stabbing Abby in the neck when she's killing Ellie, Dina decides to scream and just push her and then try to stab, and that's the third time. I mean, isn't there a moment in one of the like quick time instances when Abby and Ellie are fighting when Ellie could like clearly stab Abby in the throat or the face or something, and she maybe like cuts her in the leg? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, she not even tried to stab, she just slashed her hand around with the knife. It was... If you watch the animation, it's also so funny because she's clearly trying to stab her somewhere around the waistline or the face, and then it looks like a comedic moment that she just throws her hand down and decides to stab her in the leg, the place where she can do the least damage.
Here's another one. How did Ellie, Dina, and Tommy go back to Jackson from Seattle, or even just survive? They were all injured almost to the point of death. Tommy can barely walk now that he's back in Jackson. Yeah, again, it's the covering great distances in this. I mean, it's supposed to be a version of our world. I mean, the thought of going across all these mountain states in the U.S. without, like a lot of modern conveniences, while very injured. I mean, there's just so many questions. The elements, food, clothing. Again, this stuff is just glossed over completely.
Also, Ellie has her hand broken. I think the biggest thing, you mentioned food. I was also thinking about this. How did they manage to get enough food for all of these journeys? We never see that. I think it's also a very important thing in a post-apocalypse movie or book or TV series or game. Often food is not mentioned ever. I do understand why you can let it slide in a story like this, but there's just so many weird plot holes that you start noticing all the rest. Because in other movies, you let it slide because you believe what you're watching. You don't notice the small things. You don't notice that the characters don't need to go to the toilet. Why would they? But in a game like this, where you see so many plot holes, the things that you would normally gloss over are now also in front of you, and you notice everything. And that was the case when I played the game for the second time. I started noticing everything. That's how this list came to life.
Yeah, and that gets me thinking back to clothing too. I've only watched a few YouTube clips. I've not actually watched the HBO series, but I notice most of the time the actors are all in really pristine clothing. I mean, at times they look like fashion models, and it's like, why are they not dirtier and grimier? I mean, even the game does a better job of that than the show.
Yeah, that's true. We've spoken about Indiana Jones before. The realism you see. Yeah.
Yes, how dirty and greasy Harrison Ford looks throughout the movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember they gave him his iconic hat, and yeah, the costume designer, when she gave him his hat, she said something was off. So she took the hat, rolled it up, sat on it, threw it in the sand, and it took a couple of days of just making the hat be used before they could give it to the actor, so it looks natural on him.
No, and that's such a good call out of that kind of thing done well, done right. I saw a promotional image recently of the actress who plays Abby, like a screenshot from an episode of the show, and she's in crisp jeans. She has a crisp t-shirt on. It's just odd. You have a couple notes here about the end of the game as well. Ellie cuts down Abby, and that's it. Just stands there looking, saying nothing, letting her just go on, save Lev, and then slowly walk toward the boats. And then after a few minutes, she remembers what she really came there to do. Everyone on those pulls is dead except for Abby and Lev. They're severely malnourished, yet Abby has the strength and power to not only carry Lev to the boats, but then also have a long-lasting fight with Ellie, where she's slashed and stabbed with a knife multiple times. And then after years of seeking revenge on Abby, the final moment, she remembers Joel with a guitar and decides to stop. What about her remembering Jesse being killed by Abby, or remembering that Tommy is now disabled because of Abby, or remembering that Abby literally bashing Dina's head into the concrete floor and then relishing in the thought of slitting the throat of a pregnant woman? Yeah, right. If you're not doing it for Joel, do it at least for the three of them. And I agree with you completely in that train of thought. And I even thinking about what Joel was willing to do for Ellie. Not saying Ellie doesn't do a lot in the name of revenge, but it's like in that moment, I don't think Joel is hesitating. If the shoe was on the other foot and it was for Ellie, it is really strange to go through all of that, get to the end, and it's like, oh, don't you get it? The whole point is revenge is not worth it. And it's like, yeah, but this is a video game. And I've poured over 20 hours into this, and I watched you kill, brutalize, mutilate my favorite characters, and now in this moment, I don't even get to choose. Like, why can't you choose in that moment?
Also, when you look at Ellie in part 1, she is quite selfless. I mean, even in the last conversation she has with Joel, she talks about Tess, she talks about Riley, and she talks about them in such a way that let's not make their deaths be pointless. She thinks about other people. Why now does she not think about other people? Why doesn't she think about, Jesse, Tommy, Dina, her baby? When she was a little kid, she thought about the point, why did other people die? Because they wanted the cure. That's why she's mad at Joel in part 2, because those deaths don't matter now. So now, when these deaths occur because she wanted revenge on Abby, and she didn't find that revenge, now she has the choice to make those deaths matter or not. And she chooses those deaths to not matter.
Yeah, it's a strange thing how so many other people were involved in this. Other people were invested in Joel's death other than Ellie, right? She wasn't the only one who cared. Yet, right, it all kind of fades away at the end. And it's, I think if it were like one of two decisions, right, you get to choose at the very end to kill or spare Abby, that's just a lot more interesting.
Also, I believe that if you did kill Abby at the end of the whole story would be even more thought-provoking and powerful. Because you would come home, see that you've lost everything, and then you as a player would think, what was even the point of this? And was that worth it? And now you come back home, Abby is still alive, and you don't think, was that worth it? You think, okay, that was pointless. I played for 23 hours for nothing, really. So I do think that us not having the decision at the end, or us having this ending that we have now, just reduces the impact the game could have had.
Yeah, I agree completely. This is another good note that you had. So Dina's pregnant. You can't see her belly yet. But she does have to stay at the theater and rest because she feels so bad. Yet Mel, in a very advanced form of pregnancy, goes bouncing around, riding on the back of a truck, shooting zombies. And she does so much stuff without hardship. And it's like, right, obviously, two different women could have two different pregnancy experiences, but it seems silly when there's two notable pregnant women in the story and their experiences are this different, to the point where Dina is basically, like you said, incapacitated. She can't do anything. And Mel is mostly fine. The car chase with Jesse, it was awesome. And it's a shame that this game that's twice as long has fewer set pieces compared to part one. I agree. We kind of talked about that earlier. The car chase reminds me a little bit of the hanging upside down moment. It's kind of like that. But you're right. There's just, and the game is just so dark. It's so violent. There's so much killing and character stuff going on that it feels like there just wasn't room for these moments. Like it just wasn't a priority.
Also, I think I remember that a quote, I think it's from Neil Druckmann, when he spoke about making The Last of Us Part 2. He said, the word fun isn't a way we think about making games at Naughty Dog. And also, if you look at the set pieces that we do have in the game, most of them are for Abby. The whole fighting sequence, running away from Seraphites and a giant forest fire, is when you play Abby. A giant boss fight with the Rat King, that happens when you play with Abby. A horror sequence in a giant building where you need to go from top to bottom without an elevator, that happens when you play with Abby. And it just seems like we're forced to have more interesting experiences gameplay wise with a character that we don't really want to play with. And I did feel a bit manipulated when I played with Abby, because when you play Ellie, you are forced to kill a dog. When you play Abby, you are twice forced to pet that dog and play fetch with it. It's even a funny thing, if you watch speedruns of the game, that's a thing that just takes time from you. Speedrunners just have to stand there and wait for the thing to stop her playing with the dog, because you can't progress forward if you don't play with the dog. And there's a lot of situations where you're just forced to do something good with Abby and forced to do something bad with Abby. And it, for me, it's just the game telling you, this is a good person, this is not a good person. You just have to accept it. And for me, I don't believe it. It's superficial for me.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It feels very forced. And it goes back to what I said earlier, where it's like, why are we exploring this so much when it seems like a duh to me? Like, duh. If you were Abby, you wouldn't like Ellie. You wouldn't like Joel. You wouldn't like Tommy. Like, of course, right? So this whole, like, I need to now spend 12 hours with her and pet dogs and fight a boss and all this stuff. It's like, no, I already could have drawn this conclusion. I know that if I were Abby, I'd feel different. This is supposed to be about Joel and Ellie. And I don't think the character Abby even existed when they made the first game. Like I said, it feels like it was all retconned, and it was like, oh, she's the doctor's daughter and all that. And it's like, yeah, that's just, they could have taken the story so many directions to have taken it in this direction. Yeah, I mean, also, I can't help but roll my eyes.
I think maybe this is why I feel that this is some sort of fan fiction. Something really insignificant in part 1 now is a really significant thing in part 2. And some things in part 1 that didn't really have an answer, and that was powerful because they never were answered in the game. In part 2 have a really good answer, and it's just, for example, the ambiguity of if Joel's decision was good or bad. It was ambiguous in part 1. In part 2, everyone says it's bad, and you're forced to believe that it's bad, making the original game's story feel, I don't know, less important if the next story then tells you everything that happened and why it happened. And
I'm with you completely. It does feel like the existence of the second game reframes, recolors, reflavors so many moments from the first game in ways that just feel weird to me. You know, it's like, I don't believe this was the original vision, like this was the original intent, and there's all this kind of retconning and retroactive story work that, yeah, it's really weird. Oh, yeah. Like, as a sequel, it's really weird in that sense. You had a note here too, when there's like second thoughts to do the surgery or not, why didn't they just wait? Like, why is there this insane rush? You can't wait for her to wake up, you can't wait for her to consent to this, not talk to Joel. Yeah, like, if she's agreeing to go through with it and there's a belief that there's a 99% chance she'll die from it, it's just so strange. Like, this has been dragging on for so many years. It was such a crazy journey for them to even get to the hospital. The urgency around it all playing out at the end, Even that is a little strange in part 1. But I think you only think back on that once the events of part 2 have played out. You make an interesting comparison here too. Abby wants revenge because Joel unknowingly kills her father. Joel saves her life, and that means nothing. She does not hesitate to torture him for a long time and kills him in front of his surrogate daughter. Yet the Seraphites have killed many members of the Liberation Front, Abby's friends included. She gets saved by 2 of the Seraphites, and without hesitation, instantly likes them, helps them, goes on a dangerous quest for supplies. Just like it's so strange. Yeah, and there's that quote, that Mel quote, you're a piece of shit, Abby, you always have been. Yeah, there's a line, Yara to Abby, I'm sorry for the loss of your friends. Abby replies, it is what it is. And then later, Abby to Ellie, you killed my friends. Yeah, the first opportunity Abby gets, she headbutts, breaks an arm, and brutally knocks out one of her WLF friends. Just like that, she switches sides, and now she hunts and kills them. You are my people, she now tells Lev right before slaughtering her lifelong allies. Yeah, I mean, it's a video game, but when you actually stop and think about it, you're like, wait, she's been on the side of this faction for years. To just make these decisions in a matter of a day or two. I know, I don't even know what you say about most of this. Yeah. You know, you just had another note, that cherry on top, that they blatantly misled, lied to players with the trailers and interviews before the game came out. And in hindsight, it is really weird. Like, I understand you don't want to show, everything, you don't want to reveal everything, but when you're trying to throw off the fans to this degree, it's just weird. It's weird to me, and I don't like studios doing that. Why reveal anything? Why put out a trailer? Why do anything? If you're that concerned, just do nothing. Well, and I know in the subsequent years, like Druckmann has said multiple times, he believes the criticisms of the game basically all go back to like sexism, bigotry, and the fact that some of the big plot spoilers leaked prior to the release of the game. And it's like, oh, had this stuff not leaked out, people wouldn't have reacted negatively to it. Is there probably a little bit of that going on? Yeah. But I think it's unfair to like dismiss any criticism of the game, even fair, level-headed criticism, for those reasons, I
think it's a bit unfair for him to speak like that. Because if you have a franchise that people love dearly so much that when you make a second part for that beloved franchise and it will be controversial, people tell you, hey, that was controversial, I think it was not worth it. Your reaction, it's unfair to say, okay, your opinion doesn't matter because I made a great story and you are bad for not understanding the deepness of everything. When I finished the game, I felt robbed for an experience I was promised, but it was never delivered. Because of that one trailer I saw. Because a lot of people said, well, they had to lie because if they wouldn't lie, then you would know something was going on. No, you just don't lie.
The way Druckmann has spoken about this publicly, he's almost like attempted to invalidate any criticism of part 2. Whereas you would think, like, he either wouldn't address it really, or he would just say something kind of neutral, like, hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Outside of like really weird, hateful comments, like, I understand this isn't going to be every player's cup of tea, and that's they're entitled to their opinion. He's never spoken like that. He's always spoken very defensively, and I don't think he's come off great publicly, right? Like, people are too stupid, too unenlightened to grasp like the nuances of the story, and I don't feel that way at all, because I completely understand what he set out to do. And I just don't.
Or maybe we don't. Or maybe you don't.
Oh yeah, well, you're right. I mean, if I'm so ignorant, I guess I wouldn't know, would I?
Yeah.
It's just funny. Like, if you told like a really big fan of the first game back in like 2014 or 2015, if you sat them down and you were like, okay, so we're making a sequel, and the gist of it is, like, to summarize it, there is going to be this really muscular young woman. she's going to bash Joel's head in and kill him with a golf club. And you're actually going to spend many hours playing as her, so you get to like her and realize that everybody has different perspectives and revenge isn't worth it. What do you think about that? That's our sequel. I mean, people wouldn't have believed you. They would have thought you were trolling, you were kidding, because it is unbelievable. It would have been unbelievable years ago.
Yeah, to continue with a story like this from a masterpiece that the original The Last of Us was, just feels... it's just out of place. And I'm gonna speak about my brother again. I talked about him in the beginning. He finally played part 2 a week ago. I borrowed him my PlayStation. He never had the chance to play part 2. He didn't know anything about the game. When he finished the game, he told me that he uninstalled it. He never wants to look at it again. For his mind, part 2 never happened. And in my opinion, he is the biggest The Last of Us fan I know. So if this is his reaction, I think it says something.
For sure, because you know he's not the only person who feels that way. And I think it's important to point out too, and I'm sure you would agree with this based on conversations we've had in the past, I'm totally fine with surrendering my expectations and just going on a ride with a book, a movie, a TV series, a video game. I don't need a bunch of fan service. I don't need things to appeal to my unique sensibilities or whatever. I'm okay with being challenged. I like when my expectations are subverted. So I'm just saying that because I feel like it's important to say that. But at the same time, I'm also very comfortable looking at something and being like, no, I think that was just clumsily done. I think it's clumsy. I think it's silly. And I don't have to enjoy it.
It's important for you to be able to say that because it's your opinion, and for other people to accept your opinion. Because what I've noticed on the discourse of The Last of Us Part 2, if you do not like the story, people treat you badly. There's this coworker I have, she literally once said that The Last of Us 2 Part 2 is a litmus test for if she thinks someone is a cool person or not. If someone doesn't like The Last of Us Part 2, he is, in her eyes, crossed out. I've had a cool conversation with a friend of mine. He recently beat Part 2 just before the second season on HBO, and he liked the game, and we went to a bar. We talked about the game. I told him that I didn't like it. I told him why I don't like it. He told me why he did like it and that he did like it. And that's it. We just exchanged opinions. He had some points he made. I made some points. He understood them. I understood him. And it basically boils down to it's all subjective. And if I didn't like it, okay, I'm happy that other people liked it. That's it.
We do feel that there are a few redeeming qualities in the game, right? Like the combat, the gameplay is really good in part 2. Like the way it's designed, the fluidity of the movement, like how quickly you can move around, do different things, and visually it's a very beautiful game. The sound design's really good. I think even like in terms of art direction, like some of the aesthetics, even like when Dina and Ellie are in Seattle, like there is something just visually that's cool with like the two girls in jeans with backpacks, with handguns sneaking around. I mean, there's things I think part of the team did well. But when it comes to like the heart of it, that story and some of the decisions that were made, decisions that we're not allowed to make as players, yeah, I just don't, I've had a lot of time to kind of re-examine the game and think back on it. And yeah, I've decided I just don't care for it. And it's definitely created, I think, a bias for me against the studio. And I don't feel very interested in this intergalactic game. Like I'm going to kind of sit back and see what other people say, what other people think. But I think knowing that Naughty Dog is controlled by Neil Druckmann now, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of other voices and opinions going on in the studio. My feelings have just changed a lot about Naughty Dog.
Yeah, for me too. I love Crash Bandicoot. I still need to play Jak and Daxter. I love the Uncharted series. I love The Last of Us. But man, since Neil Druckmann is the head of the studio, I just don't see them doing well. There was this The Last of Us multiplayer thing they've been working on for like, I don't know, 5 years. And they, for some reason, decided not to do it. For a reason that, why didn't they think of it before?
What was the kind of overall reaction to the list you shared? Do you feel like, I mean, obviously Reddit, Reddit's a pretty crazy place. I'm sure some people, you got some pushback, you got some hate for posting it. Do you feel like some people were reasonable about it though? Some people were like, yeah, these are fair points.
It was funny because I posted it on 2 subreddits. One of them is called The Last of Us, and the other one called is The Last of Us 2. And I've noticed that in the subreddit The Last of Us, people love the game and don't accept anything bad about the game. And in The Last of Us 2, they really dislike the game and accept every critique of the game, but the critique has to make sense. Because I often see people critiquing the game and other people don't really accept those critiques because they are just illogical. So I posted it on both subreddits, and on one of the subreddits it was really well received, and people also added their opinions and their comments and said that this is a very good list. And on the other subreddit that I posted it to, it got a bunch of downvotes and a lot of comments saying, you're just nitpicking, The Last of Us Part 1 had even more plot holes than you listed over here, this is unfair. And my reaction was, okay, then please list some plot holes. And I never got a list. I got one answer about when Joel rides his car towards that bandit and the bandits take out Joel from the vehicle, why didn't they have guns to shoot them on sight? They instead bashed Joel's head in glass and tried to slit his throat with glass. For me, the answer is very easy, because these are survivors. They have limited resources. Not all of them have guns. It's really logical. Why didn't the guy use his fists to kill him? Because it takes a while to beat someone to death. He chose to try to kill him using the glass because that would just be quicker and more efficient, and he wouldn't need to use so much energy. So I never got a list back. So I've got 2 really different reactions from 2 really different subreddits.
Yeah, I mean that's the weird thing about it. It's so, part 2 is such a polarizing game. It's been so politicized that people either speak of it as if it's this flawless masterpiece or it's absolute trash. And obviously, like what we're doing now and like what you did with your list, like we're trying to have like a more thoughtful conversation about it, but it almost feels like there's not room for that. Like, right, nobody wants to hear it. You're either on the side of it's great or you're on the side of it's trash, and that's pretty boring.
I know people that they refuse to play the game and refuse to watch the series because they hear so much about it. I have, for example, the same thing with Skyrim. I've never played Skyrim, but I'm hearing about it from everywhere that it lost its appeal to me. I don't know anything about the game, I just know everyone is talking about it, and it's just not appealing anymore.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah, like because that's how I felt, Leon. I almost felt pressured into liking it, or even if parts of it really, really bothered me, I felt like I just had to accept it, Yeah. And now I feel differently about that. It's like, no, I don't really accept it. I just kind of disengage with it. I've decided I don't care for it. It's not a game I'm going to play again. And sadly, it's changed the way I see this studio that I really used to love.